Are you ready to hear a remarkable story that will inspire you to be yourself without an apology? On today's episode of Out of the Closet into the World, we're talking to the amazing Cezanne, a transgender trailblazer, pageant winner, and a strong advocate for the LGBTQ plus community. Cezanne has faced many challenges and broken many barriers, especially in the world of beauty and self expression. Her story is all about strength, determination, and the power of living authentically. Today, she's here with us sharing her journey, offering advice on navigating identity and relationships, and talking about how we can all make the world more inclusive. This is a conversation you don't want to miss. So, wherever you are, whatever your truth may be, join us and let Cezanne's story inspire you to step into the world with pride. Welcome to Out of the Closet into the World, the podcast where we'll break down walls, lift up voices, and celebrate the strength of being your true self. I'm your host, Ada Arancibia. We will hear inspiring stories of people who have faced challenges and embrace who they really are. Join me on this journey of honesty, empowerment, and change. Together, let's step out of the closet and into the world. Let's dive in. Hey, Cezanne, how are you feeling today?
Good afternoon, Ada. I'm feeling pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast. This is an absolute honor to have you here today with us. Can you briefly introduce yourself and give us a short version of your story?
Okay. My name is Cezanne. I am a 59-year-old mixed race transgender woman. I am a former showgirl. During the 90s and the early 2000s, I reigned as many different things. In the last 10 years, I've transitioned, though, into a more professional type of career. I'm assistant property manager for a small 120-unit complex in Florida. So that's where I'm at right now.
Amazing, amazing. Now, Cezanne, looking back, how did you feel about growing up in terms of your gender identity?
Well, like I always tell people, I always found it very strange that as a child, I would have the thought process of wondering why I was a boy and not a girl. And as I got older, it always seemed strange that a child would think something like that. So as I got older, of course, when you're a kid and you feel these things, you don't understand that there are other people like you. I was raised very Catholic in a Catholic situation with my parents. I was adopted. So as a young kid, my first recollection of memory is thinking, why am I not a girl? And so that was the beginning of my trying to understand my gender as a child. It took me many years to understand and actually to become the person you see here today. It took many years for me to reconcile what was in my mind, what was in my heart, and how I looked. It took a while for all those things to come together.
Now, take us back a little bit further. Now, you mentioned that you were adopted. Where exactly were you born? Like, where are you coming from?
I was born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky. I was born in 1965. From what little I know about my birth biological parents, and I didn't find even this out until literally 10 years ago, right before I moved here, that I had my biological mother was a German and Irish descent, and my father was African American. From what I was told, I don't know that my father ever knew anything about me because all I could find out was unidentifying information, meaning they could tell me like African American, German, Irish, age, that type of thing, occupation, but they wouldn't give me names or anything like that. Because it was a Catholic orphanage. You know, they're very secretive and everything. For many, many years, I knew I was adopted. My parents told me as a kid, but I always had this feeling that I wanted to know where I came from. And of course, now that I'm at the age that I am, that's a stupid thing to think because everyone has the right to know where they came from. But I was adopted by my parents. My mom was, she was 29 years at the time. And I believe the reason I was adopted was because she had had a series of miscarriages and wasn't able to carry a child to term. She always tells the story that, well, she used to tell the story. She's passed away now. But she used to tell the story that when she went into the orphanage and She looked around and she says that when she saw me, that I just started smiling and looked at her, and she said that she knew that that was her baby. So she,
Oh, so it was an immediate connection between the two. Cezanne, did you have a sense of who you were since a young age?
I can't say that I necessarily had a true sense of who I was. And I'll say that because where I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky in the 70s, in the 80s. And because of my complexion, I sometimes was ridiculed by the black kids for being too light skinned. But then when I was attended an all white school, it was the opposite. I was called, and I'm not saying my whole experience was like that, but these were the things that I did deal with as a kid. I got it from both sides, a lot of times because I was probably effeminate, more effeminate than the other guys and stuff in school, although I didn't really think I was, but that caused a lot of trouble. I remember as a kid, there being lots of questions. I could hear relatives saying things about me, that I was different, that I was funny. I'm sure
The,
you're aware of the things I'm trying to talk about. I'm saying,
the,
yeah.
the term now is known as to be bully. So you were bully in school.
Yes, definitely, yeah.
Wow. Can you tell us a little bit more about the challenges you face as a child that shape who you are and it helped you understand your gender better?
Well, as a child, I can't say it took me a long time to understand. As a kid, I had those questions, but because I was so involved in church, it made me feel very confused a lot of times because, they always tell you in church, especially the Catholic Church, that God don't make no mistakes. He knew you before you knew himself. All these type of things. But then in the next breath, when they see you are your authentic self, they chastise you or make you feel less than who you are. And when those things started happening for me, I didn't necessarily question my faith, but I questioned the church because it seemed very hypocritical. I've always had a strong faith, regardless of what anybody else has tried to say to me, because of my growing up. And I believe those things. God did know me before I knew myself. And if he knew me before I knew myself, he knew exactly who and what I was going to be. So I've never had any shame in who I eventually became. I know that's not what you actually asked me about, the whole childhood thing, but it took me a long time through growing up and seeing other individuals and seeing how other people were treated. And I think that eventually that's what shaped me into the person that I am today.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So, well, it does summarize because you went through those challenges. It did mold you into the individual that you are today. So that's your story.
I want to touch on something real quick that I just thought about when you were talking about my childhood that's important to say. Well, I got to say that as a kid, I was molested. I was molested when I was 6 years old. And then I was molested again when I was 10 years old, I think it was. You were asking how things shaped you. That was something that did shape me because having those things happen to you at a very young age and you're not fully equipped to understand those things, it sexualizes you and makes you think about things that you're not mentally equipped to think about at such a young age. From those things happening to me, I started to think about things at a young age that I probably shouldn't have been thinking about.
That's powerful. When that happened to you, Cezanne, what was your thought process and how were you coping with going on another day? So, what is your message for an individual that is going through the same situation that you went through as a child? What would you tell that person?
I would tell that person you cannot let these situations and circumstances rule the rest of your life. I've seen many people in my lifetime that had horrible things happen to them as a kid, and they use that sometimes as an excuse for the rest of their life. You can use it as an excuse or you can use it as something to overcome. I chose to use it as something to overcome because those people that did those things to me, I come to realize they're out living their life. And I'm going to be sitting around worrying about what had happened and what had and what did and what. It does me no good. Those things happened to me. I didn't ask for them to happen to me. So I don't have the guilt that I think I once carried as a child. I used to think because I was the way people would try to tell you that. But no one deserves those kinds of things to happen to them. I don't care who you are and what you got.
Wow. You mentioned that you don't have that guilt in your heart, that it sounds like you have forgiven these individuals who did that to you. That way you can continue to live your life. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would say that it's taken me many, many years to forgive. I'll never forget, but I have to forgive because I have to move on. I have to let those shackles go that hold me down, that make me feel less than because I'm not. A lot of times, people that are abused do feel less than. They feel like they deserve those kind of situations because, for whatever reason, people tell you that you're less than or you're undeserving of love or you're undeserving of dignity. So, yeah.
The question that most of the listeners and the viewers want to know, can you share your coming out story and what were some of the pivotal moments or challenge that you face in sharing your identity with others, in this case, your parents?
Well, technically, I've always said I don't really feel like I ever had a coming out. I just always was, basically. But I can remember a specific incident that happened when I was a sophomore in high school. I was a theater kid. I went to performing arts high school, so I was always in theaters, singing, dancing. I played instruments, that kind of thing. So I was always in some kind of production or something. This one particular time, I was coming home. My father had picked me up from school because I had a late rehearsal. And he stopped the car on the way home and told me that he didn't know what was going on, but he wanted to let me know that mom was upset about something and she'd been crying all day and he wasn't sure what it was about. I immediately knew what it was about. I had this friend in school, this girlfriend of mine, that we were friends and we would write notes back and forth. I liked this boy in school and we were talking about the fact that I liked this boy. So it was very open conversation that wasn't meant for nobody else to hear but us two. I don't know why, but I sometimes feel like maybe I wanted them to find this or what have you. But I had the note folded up and upstairs in my dresser.
Oh my God.
And my mother opened it and read it. And so I'm trying to make a long story short. I got home and I knew what was happening. So I tried to avoid the situation. So I just was basically like, okay, I'm really tired. Gonna go to bed. Got a long day tomorrow. Talk to you later. So I go up to my bed. So I go up to my bedroom and literally about 20 minutes later, they knock on the stairs and tell me to come downstairs and stuff. They're just in disarray. And to be honest, I was kind of shocked that
They were so understanding.
No. They were not understanding. I was gagged that they were gagged because they acted like they had no idea. I'm like, I don't think I was the butchest child. I wasn't a sissy, but all these people had been talking about me all these years. You couldn't possibly not have had some kind of clue. I mean, I'm here dancing and theater. It seemed odd to me that they were that shocked. I can't lie and say there wasn't a difficult situation that night. I felt bad because they were upset. I had never seen my father cry like that. They were very distraught about the whole situation. So for the rest of my sophomore year, it was very tense in the house. It was very quiet. I feel like for the most part, and these are my parents, and I'm a sophomore, but I feel like for the rest of that year, we just kind of didn't really go. We just didn't have much interaction with each other. It always seemed very difficult. As time went on and through my junior year and senior year, things got a little bit better. Basically because for me, I was I know who I am. I'm not hiding anything. I'm not have to be the person that I am. Eventually, now mind you, back at the time, I didn't understand that I was a transgender person. I knew I had those feelings inside of me. I hadn't gone that far in my transition yet. So literally by the time I graduated high school, I was of the mindset that this is me, this is who I am, and I love you. I want you to love me. But if you can't, then I got to go do my thing. I got to go live my life because I've got to be myself. I can't go to some psychiatrist. I can't go to some conversion type situation because you are uncomfortable. I know who I am. If you want me to go to a psychiatrist to help you, I'll go. And that was my mindset pretty much then on out.
Were there any particular people or resources that helped or hinder you during this period?
We're talking about when this all happened. This was the early 80s because I was a freshman. At that time, clearly, first of all, That's around the time that AIDS was first starting to show up and everything. The world was not as accepting as it is now. So there weren't like any places or people that I could necessarily turn to for any kind of, like, for example, there wasn't like a gay student union or anything like that. There was no LGBTQ student union or anything like that kind of stuff. The best thing you could probably do is maybe some of your friends that might be going through the same thing, you all got together and conversed about what it was. But that was pretty much it. I feel like you were still trying to hide it as much as you could. Although I was an open book. I mean, it was very obvious what type of person I was. But no, I didn't have any kind of resources at that particular time. Yeah.
Moving on to your first boyfriend experience, Cezanne. What was your experience with relationships and dating as a transgender woman?
I didn't fully transition until I was 26. I started transitioning when I was 20, but I never fully lived my life as a woman. At the time, I was a showgirl, but I had other jobs and stuff too. So I would start hormones and stop, start, stop, start, stop. Then I won Miss USA in 1990, and then I freaked out because I had to travel that year. And I was right in the middle of my transition. And back then, for me, I didn't have a doctor. So all of my hormones that I was getting was from my roommate. So when she moved away, I wasn't able to get any at the time. So I knew that as Miss USA, I had to be a professional person. I had to show up in a certain way. At the time, I was only 24 when I won, and I didn't know how to live an everyday existence that way. At that time, I didn't. So I suppressed it for that year and just did everything I could to be a successful Miss USA, which to me meant being a boy, I guess, during the off times and stuff. So I never really had a boyfriend until I got hired at the Baton. And in my first year there, I met a guy who was ex-Marine. And he was my boyfriend for about a year and a half. But there was problems in the relationship right after that. For one, he was married. And that was a big ordeal. When you're young, you get yourself into situations that when you're older, you realize wasn't the best for you at the time. But at the time, I was so thrilled that a man, a masculine man, found me attractive. All the other things that I should have been concerned about went out the window because I was more concerned with the fact that he liked me and he made me feel like what I thought a woman should feel like at that time. Yeah. So that was my
Now,
first boyfriend.
how did you navigate the challenges of dating while transitioning?
Well, luckily for me, I was always a showgirl. So back then, you only work in the club. So anybody that you meet knows the tea right off the bat. So that makes it easier than being out someplace and meeting somebody that don't know and you got to explain. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, I've had my moments back in the day where I like to go fooling and all that kind of stuff. And not saying that that's a good thing to do because I almost got into a lot of trouble a couple times. But for the most part, yeah, I always working in a nightclub. Most of the guys that I ever met were people that met me in a situation where I was at work. So they knew the situation I had at the time. So it wasn't anything I really had to explain most of the time.
What advice will you give a young transgender individual who is transitioning, is at an early stage of their transition and is trying to understand how dating works and to be comfortable in her own skin? What advice will you give that individual?
I would say, first of all, you need to have a community around you. I would seek out other individuals with like-minded aspirations. I also would probably try to find other transgender women that have been through the same thing as you, that have maybe a little bit older, that have a little bit more experience. I would say, especially in these days and times, there's so many resources online that you can get to, and in different cities too. Even here in this little city where I'm at, there's a lot of
LGBTQ centers.
yes, events and stuff that can point you in the right direction, much more so than there was back in my day. Yeah.
Absolutely. Living as a transgender woman, Cezanne, what has been the most rewarding part of living authentically as a transgender woman?
Me, the most is feeling like I'm living my authentic self, that I am being the person that I was meant to be. That's the best part about it. I was just talking to somebody the other day and I was telling them that I think a part of my journey was as a man, I always felt inferior, scared, which is weird because as a woman, I have no fear. There's no place that I wouldn't go. There's no place I wouldn't walk into. There's nobody that I wouldn't talk to because I have that much confidence. I'm presenting the person that I know that I am. When I was that other person, I was timid and just shy. I always was afraid of stuff, afraid of my own shadow sometimes, I would say. Yeah.
So you feel like that, because you became a transgender woman, that gave you the power and that gave you that boost to be
It
able
gave me the
to.
confidence. It led me to be confident for the person that I knew that was inside. When the outside matched the inside, I was able to be a fully functional person in society. And I say that because a lot of times before I transitioned, I feel like a lot of times girls that want to transition, you live in the shadows sometimes. You live in like your own little bubble of working in a nightclub and you only see these particular people. Like I will tell people that are young and I want to live a transgender experience, you have to be prepared to go out and pay your bills, go out and do your grocery shopping. You have to be prepared that you are presenting yourself this way to other people in the world. If you are going to do that, you have to be prepared for what they give back to you.
That's powerful right there. What kind of challenges do you still face in your daily life or in society or even after transitioning?
I don't really feel like I face any specific challenges right now because I'm an older woman. I've been in the game for a long time now. I'm a lot more knowledgeable on situations, personalities, idiosyncrasies of other people. What I would say I find difficult now is not necessarily anything that I have to go through, but it's more so what's going on in the world around us. And all the Republicans are trying to use against the transgender people just because they're trying to throw stuff at the wall because they have nothing to go on except for lies. So I'm more afraid for the younger generation than I am because I say that, like, to me, if I couldn't get any more hormone pills today, I'm going to be all right. But I worry about it for the younger generation because, like I was saying, there's so many things that you can get now. It's progressively gotten better for the youth. In my youth, you couldn't do that. You had to get black market this, black market that. Now, in this day and age, the children have it so much better because even though all that's going on, there's an acceptance among most people in the country, but these people are trying to derail that. That makes me very, very sad.
Absolutely. In your own words, what are some of the most common misconceptions or stereotypes you wish people would stop believing about transgender individuals?
Well, one thing that really annoys me is the whole bathroom thing.
Yes.
I've been going into bathrooms 35 years or longer, in the women's restroom, in airports, in hotels, in doctors' offices, in convention centers, in restaurants, in bus stations, everywhere. Not one time have I been in the women's restroom, have I sought out a woman or knocked on a door. You know what I go into those places to do? To pee.
Right.
And to come out and hurry to get on my flight. I went through a cancer 5-6 years ago and it messed up my urinary issues. So using the restroom for me is very, very important. It just floors me that they would think that I'm going to the restroom to do anything but try to relieve myself. It's just the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life.
I completely agree with you. I personally have been using female restrooms. We go in there just for one thing. And like you mentioned, we just go in there to handle our business and just to come out. That will create more issues if they will force transgender people to go into male restrooms, because how do we look standing next to a male? That would just create chaos everywhere around.
The bottom line is transgender people are more likely to be assaulted and hurt than the other way around. I don't know too many stories about transgender people going around trying to hurt other people. We're just trying to live our lives. And most of us are trying to do it off in the corners in our own little quiet little world, just trying to have a little piece of the world for us. Ain't bothering nobody. I don't understand it.
How How do you approach self-care? You mentioned that you went through cancer a couple years ago. What practices or support system have been important for you in managing your well-being?
Well, luckily for me, when I moved where I'm at now, I didn't at first have a great healthcare system, but eventually I ended up with some great people who really cared about me, took an interest in my well-being. So I was very fortunate here. I was able to meet these people and this program that has afforded me the opportunity to keep myself healthy, even through the cancer, to have an insurance that was able to help me pay for those bills and stuff was very godsend.
You mentioned you started your transition right when the AIDS epidemic occurred. What are your thoughts on, individuals living today with HIV?
I'm a person myself that is living with HIV. And what I will say is that the medicines and the procedures that they have now are nothing like they were in the 80s. When I was a first of age, 18, 19, 20, my group of friends that I was closest to in Louisville, Kentucky, they all contracted HIV at a very early age. And because of what was offered at that time, they all died. I sometimes would have remorse in the sense that how did I get to be lucky to survive all that? And I mean, literally, everybody that I was close to as a young person in my young life are all gone. So I'm thankful that for whatever reason, it didn't affect me in those years, that I didn't get diagnosed for much later. So that when I was diagnosed, medicine was much better for you. So what I would say for anybody that's HIV positive today is get with a program, find your local LGBTQ center because they are a wealth of knowledge and support in these situations.
What are some of the misconceptions that people may have about living with HIV that you think it's important to address?
I think that one of the misconceptions is that it's a death sentence. I think that people think that when you contract HIV that you're going to die. And that is not the case. As a matter of fact, for me, it's kind of strange, but I oftentimes feel that having HIV saved my life because it made me take stock of what I was doing with my life, what I was putting into my body. Eventually, because I had HIV, I was on a program that allowed me to have really great insurance. Through that, when I did have cancer, I was able to have the proper procedures and to find the proper doctors to help me beat that. And what's crazy is I've had more issues with my cancer situation than I ever have with HIV. I'm undetectable. I take my medicine every day. I don't have any issues with that. It's other stuff that screws me over, I guess I should say.
That has been causing you health issues. What advice will you give someone who is thinking about body modifications?
Go to a doctor, a professional doctor.
Absolutely. Nowadays, there are different options to be able to achieve that specific look.
Yeah, I would say, and it's hard to tell young people to do this, but I would say the best thing to do would be to do your homework and seek, if you're wanting something specific, seek out the way to do it that's going to be legitimate, that's going to be healthy, and it's going to give you the results that you want.
Cezanne, a lot of people are so afraid of talking about mental health awareness. How do you feel after going through all the obstacles and all the things that you have gone through? You have gone through cancer, learning you have been HIV positive. How have you navigated to continue your journey and being able to cope with all of those things at one time?
Well, as time has gone on, in this year, most recently, I've gone back to church. So I would say that for me lately, that has helped sustain me and helped me calm some of the thoughts in my head. There was a time when I lost my parents back in 2008, and then the aftermath of that sent me spiraling mentally. I actually ended up in a mental facility in Chicago for a week. And from that experience, because when I went there, I was so broken and just was so like lost, at a loss, at my lowest ever. But what I found funny about it, well, not funny, but being in there, I knew that that was my bottom. I knew that that was my bottom, and the only thing left for me to do was to go up. So once I got out of there, I literally pulled my life back together. And my transition back to a normal life. Took me a minute, but I finally got it. Yeah.
Sometimes you do have to hit rock bottom to be able to reset your mindset. So, like you mentioned, the only thing you can do from at that point is go back up. Can you share with us a little bit more about what you do now in your career?
I'm assistant property manager for a small 120 unit complex. It sounds like a fancy term, but basically what I do is I answer phones and I take in money. I make sure that all the cards are done properly. I do leases. I do show apartments when we have apartments that are vacant. It's
Okay.
basically a two-person operation in the office, me and my friend Bob. Then we have a staff of about 4 or 5 guys that work maintenance for us, property, refurbishing apartments, and all that kind of stuff.
So you still running the show, in other words.
The woman always runs the show, darling.
How have you seen the workplace evolved in terms of inclusivity for transgender individuals?
Well, that's what's so strange about all this crap that's going on in the world. I noticed, and before I moved here where I live now, this is the most Republican, small, as far as population wise, that I've ever lived in my entire life. Everywhere I've ever lived has been like a
Democrat.
Democratic bubble. So, what I find crazy, and I've noticed this since I lived here, even though they're going crazy, but I just see so many people having opportunities. I see so many and I'm not just talking about passable trans people, but people don't even have a clue as to who we are out here. They're so busy thinking they're going to see Wesley Snipes in drag, basically. And that's what they're looking for. And that ain't what it's about at all. I remember one of the first things when I got here, what I liked seeing is the younger kids, the younger generation, like even like teenagers having a little bit more ability to be themselves. I went into Subway here one day and there was this little kid. I mean, he couldn't have been no more than like 15, 16 years old, but he was a little boy. And baby, she had on glitter on her cheek, but she wasn't trying to be a girl. She was just being an expressive person. And I loved it because I can remember a time when you'd have been made fun of for that. The owner of the restaurant, you can't come in here looking like that. And it made me happy to see that there's inclusivity for someone like that. Because there's room for everybody. I don't care what they try to tell you.
Absolutely. I know back in the days, things were a little bit more hard. That's why I do say that in this generation do have it a little bit easier and more lenient. Talk to us in regards to your female impersonation career. Do you still perform or you're no longer performing?
I started female impersonation in 1986. My drag mother is Robin Dupre from Chicago. I never technically said I was retired because I don't necessarily believe that you can ever retire from being a showgirl. I just didn't want to be in the everyday throes of being in a showcast anymore. I've been on a showcast pretty much ever since I started. And just the business in itself has changed a lot. The last place I worked as a showgirl in Louisville, The Connection, I got to a point there where I just was burnt out. I didn't enjoy being on stage anymore. I felt stagnant. And I was getting to be older too. So I was always in my youth. I always feel like I was known to be like the sexy dancer, that type of thing. When you get to be an older woman, you don't necessarily feel that way so much anymore. Not saying that I don't feel sexy or anything, but it's a different type of feeling and aesthetic that you give to the audience. And for me, I didn't know how to be anybody other than that sexy young girl. I kind of was like at a loss for a minute. That was part of my reason for wanting to like transition into a more professional type situation. Now, since I've been here in the last 10 years, I do miss it somewhat. As you know, the times that we've gone to do stuff together, like Miss Florida and more recently Miss Continental, that little bit of, now I don't want to do it on a regular, by any means, like every single day, every week, and I just don't. But those little things I enjoyed, and every now and then I like to pop up and do something because it makes you feel good. It's what I've known. That's the business that I was raised on. I was born to be a showgirl, and I'll always be a showgirl, whether I'm necessarily in a show or not.
Do you remember when we first met?
I do.
Do you want to share a little bit about what you remember to the viewers and the listeners?
What I remember was I was working at Parliament House at the time.
That's right.
Remember, What I remember more specifically was there was this little boy that I was liking at the time. And I just remember you used to come to the show and you were always very, very sweet and very, very talkative. And this one particular night, I just remember you. Now, mind you, I've smoked a lot of weed in my life, so my memory ain't the best. But I feel like you kept asking me advice on how to be a showgirl and how to get into the shows and stuff. And I can't remember exactly how it transpired, but I remember, I don't know how it did, but I know you followed me back to my house and I gave you a dress. And I remember us standing in it was a garage that I had converted into my dressing room. But I remember us standing in there and we were chit-chatting, talking. And finally I was like, girl, I gotta go. This boy's waiting for me.
That's right. And actually, that dress, which was a blue cachet dress, I remember to this day, was one of my first photo shoot as a female impersonator that I ever had. I looked ridiculous because my nails were, very long. The aesthetic wasn't there. But one thing I can say was that the dress was absolutely beautiful. And I was shocked when you gave me that dress. Now, what made you, if you can remember, give me that dress in particular?
To be honest, I feel like I saw something in you and just the look in your eyes, and you just seemed so hungry to be a part of it, that I think I probably saw a little bit of me in you. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. What would you say to a younger transgender person who may be struggling with their identity or coming out?
It's always hard for me to try to tell somebody how they should feel because it took me a long time to get to the point where I was okay with me. But what I would say in being genuine is be true to yourself. Know what you want, know what your limits are, know what you don't want to happen. Especially as gay people, when you come out, there's so many things thrown at you. I would say it's very important to have a strong support system. Now, whether that be your family, sometimes, especially for us gay folks, we don't necessarily have that option. Although I will say that I see a lot more parents being a little bit more accepting to the kids than they used to be. But it's important to have a strong support system, whether it be your chosen family or your biological family. I think that's very important because you need someone to tell you you're okay. You do.
Absolutely. Your voice matters. You're here for a reason. There are people that are afraid to come out. I heard the story about this girl, maybe about 2 weeks ago. She took her life because she was bullied and someone was making fun of her because she was transgender.
It's crazy. Crazy world we live in right now.
That's right. What are you most excited about the future, both personally and professionally?
For me?
Yes.
Well, to be honest with you, I'm at a point now where I'm not gonna lie, I'm looking forward to retiring, but I look forward to some different challenges. I look forward to the possibility of doing stuff in my older age that I haven't done yet, like yoga. I've always wanted to learn some yoga and I want to explore those type things. Yeah. And truth be told, even in this last year, I never said I was retiring from being a showgirl, but I suddenly kind of want to explore those possibilities a little bit more.
Are you saying you would like to come back and perform maybe on the regular basis?
I don't know about regular, I'm on tour or nothing like that, but once a month, do something somewhere, something like that. Yeah, probably something like that I could get into. Yeah.
Cezanne, what do you hope people take away from hearing your story today?
What I hope that people take away is that I've had a pretty good life. I've had some things happen to me. I've had some roadblocks along the way, but through it all, I persevered, and that I have not really let anything hold me back from being the person that I wanted to be. I hope that they see that I'm a strong individual, and especially with everything going on in the trans community and everything, I hope that they see that they ain't got no reason to be scared of us. We're just trying to live our lives just like everybody else.
I love that. Cezanne, we are reaching the end of our segment here, and we are going to play a game. It's called Rainbow Rapid Fire Questions. Now, the rules are that you have to answer the question with the first thought that comes to mind. Are you ready?
Okay.
What is your favorite pride flag color and why?
Lord, I feel ashamed that I don't necessarily know all the colors, but is purple a color?
Yes.
I would say purple because purple is just my favorite color.
And why?
Prince.
Okay. Now, who is your ultimate LGBT icon or role model?
Well, you said the first thing that come to your mind. So the first person when you said that I thought of was Tiffany Ariagas.
What is your go-to karaoke song?
I ain't never really done karaoke, but I feel like if I was going to do karaoke, I would want to do She's Faced the Hardest Times You Could Imagine. That song.
Okay. Describe the LGBTQ community in one word.
Ooh, strong.
If you could attend any pride event in the world, which one would it be?
Los Angeles.
Okay. What is your favorite movie or show featuring LGBTQ characters?
Tu Wong Fu.
Who would play you in the movie of your life?
Zendaya.
What's the best piece of advice you have ever received about being true to yourself?
The best advice about being true to yourself. Listen to your heart.
If you could add one holiday to the LGBTQ plus calendar, what would it celebrate?
I want to say coming out. Guess, but we already have that. I don't know. Oh, I guess, what would be good. This is basically for transgender people, the transition day. What was the day that you chose that from here on out, I'm going to be like this?
Kind of like your second birthday.
Yes, it's actually also a coming out day, really, kind of, sort of, but just in a different way. Yeah.
Now, finish the sentence. Love is
powerful.
Love that. Thank you so much for joining us today on Out of the Closet into the World. Your story, your resilience, and unwavering commitment to authenticity are nothing short of inspiring. You have not only shared your journey with us, but reminded us that your strength and in being true to ourselves and uplifting others is very important. It's been an absolute honor to have you here with us. Thank you for being a shining light to the LGBTQ community and beyond. We wish you continued success, and I can't wait to see what you will conquer next time, and keep being the incredible force that you are. Any last words?
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. You have a good day.
You too. Love you.
Bye-bye. Love you more. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Out of the Closet into the World. Remember, living your truth is a journey, and it's okay to take one step at a time, still figuring things out or standing in solidarity as an ally. Know that your voice matters and your story is powerful. Together, we're building a world where love, acceptance, and authenticity are celebrated. Keep embracing who you are. Keep supporting those around you. And most importantly, keep shining your light. Until next time, step out of the closet and into the world, because your truth deserves to be seen, heard, and celebrated. Stay strong, stay proud, and stay you. This is Ada Arancibia. Until next time. Thank you so much for watching and listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, comment, and share it with your friends and family. Don't forget to follow me on social media to stay updated and join this movement. I would love to hear your thoughts, so comment below. With gratitude, Ada.